The Tuscan countryside has always been sold as a sanctuary. Rolling hills, isolated dirt roads, and endless vineyards. But in 1968, that extreme isolation provided the perfect cover for something deeply sinister. For generations, it was a local cultural norm for young Italian couples to drive out into these quiet hillsides after dark. They sought privacy away from crowded family homes, parking their cars on secluded lanes late at night. On the night of August 21st, 1968, 32-year-old Barbara Lacci and 29-year-old Antonio Lobianco were parked under the trees near Signa. Lacci's 6-year-old son was asleep in the back seat. A shooter approached the vehicle in total darkness and killed both adults. The child woke up during the gunfire, and the killer physically carried the unharmed boy to a nearby house before disappearing into the night. The police recovered shell casings at the scene, identifying the murder weapon as a .22 caliber Beretta pistol. Within days, authorities arrested Lacci's husband, Stefano Mele. They found gunshot residue on his hands, and after interrogation, he offered a full confession to the authorities. Investigators treated it as an open and shut case of jealousy. The husband was put behind bars, the file was closed, and the region moved on, unaware they had just witnessed the birth of a serial killer. With Stefano Mele locked away, the hills around Florence returned to normal. For 6 years, there was absolute silence. The countryside felt safe again. Then came 1974. Another young couple was found murdered inside their parked car, on another secluded, moonless night. When investigators analyzed the crime scene, they found something impossible. The microscopic firing pin striations on the new shell casings were an exact, indisputable match to the casings from 1968. If the same gun fired both sets of bullets, the man who confessed to the 1968 crime was serving time for a shooter who was still at large. Authorities realized their earlier conviction was flawed. Panic set in. The Carabinieri flooded the region, heavily armed and under immense pressure to figure out who was actually pulling the trigger. What started as a domestic dispute fractured into an active hunt for a phantom, a chase that would ultimately stretch out over 17 years. Through the late 1970s and early 1980s, the attacks continued with an unmistakable consistency. The targets were always couples in parked cars, the locations were always isolated, and the killer exclusively struck on nights with zero moonlight. Despite a decade passing between the initial murders and the later ones, the discipline never wavered. Every single time, the killer fired the exact same .22 caliber Beretta. As the body count rose, a far more disturbing forensic signature emerged. The killer began removing specific body parts from the female victims after death. These precise, ritualistic mutilations linked the murders to one perpetrator, effectively ruling out the possibility of independent copycats. The media dubbed him Il Mostro di Firenze, the Monster of Florence. Fear of the hills became a fixture of daily life, ending the era of late-night privacy for local couples. The killer had mapped out the terrain, understood the habits of the locals, and turned the romantic Tuscan landscape into a literal hunting ground. Desperate for a break in the case, investigators circled back to Stefano Mele's 1968 confession. They focused on his social circle, a community of Sardinian immigrants living near Florence, building what became known as the Sardinian Trail theory. Police pursued this theory aggressively, over the years relying largely on witness testimony and circumstantial evidence. They secured convictions against several men in that circle, specifically Mario Vanni, Giancarlo Lotti, and for a time, Pietro Pacciani. The state claimed victory, but exact dates reveal a timeline flaw. Plotting the 16 murders and overlaying the convicted men's incarcerations, the narrative collapses. The identical .22 Beretta and forensic mutilations occurred while the accused were locked inside prison cells. Regardless of the court's ruling, the temporal evidence shows the state convicted either the wrong men or, at best, minor accomplices. In September 1985, a young French couple was camping in a secluded stretch of woods. They were attacked and killed inside their tent. They became the 16th and final confirmed set of victims. After that night, the .22 Beretta went silent forever. This final attack highlights a discrepancy in the case. The court records hold 3 convictions, but there are 16 bodies in the ground. The Sardinian Trail theory leaves both the very first killing in 1968 and this final attack in 1985 completely unresolved. Failing to account for the beginning and the end of the killer's life cycle indicates that the authorities never actually understood the whole picture. Nearly 40 years passed. Then, in 2024, modern advancements in forensic science allowed investigators to conduct new DNA testing on the original crime scene evidence. The results confirmed what independent researchers had suspected for decades. The physical evidence left at the scenes absolutely does not match the men who died in prison for the crimes. Today, the case remains a web of dead ends. The .22 Beretta was never recovered. The specific motive behind the precise mutilations remains unknown. Even speculative theories, like a connection to America's Zodiac killer, lack any concrete physical proof. The men who stood trial were likely convenient scapegoats, used to pacify a terrified public, while the actual orchestrator watched from the shadows. For 17 years, a shooter moved through the hills with total precision, killing 16 people with the same weapon and leaving no trail for the Italian justice system to follow. He simply walked away into history, unknown.